Hi everybody, I'm Jim from Uncle Jim's Worm Farm, and over the last few years I've gotten literally thousands of phone calls from people saying, okay, I got my worms, Jim, now what do I do with them? So I finally decided that I'm going to put together a little video to make it fun, to make it easy, and so you could actually see what happens. And I'll act as if I'm you, the customer, right now. I just received my bag. It's a breathable bag, and the worms can stay in this bag up to about 5 days. All right, and let's remember, I am you. I've just gotten my Uncle Jim's worms. I'm opening the bag. I'm excited. Now what I think you should get, in my opinion, find yourself an old tub. Doesn't have to be deep. In this instance, it's about 18 inches wide, 2 feet long, 6 inches deep. Again, 18 inches wide, 2 feet long, 6 inches deep. I'm going to get my worms ready. All right, here are my worms. They've just come in. They might seem like they're lifeless, but let's face it, if you were in a bag for 3 to 5 days in the United States Postal System, you'd be a little bit, probably slow yourself. Now these worms have been packed in extremely dry peat moss to protect them from any kind of bitter cold weather or extremely hot weather. We found out packing them in extremely dry peat moss tends to shrink the worm a little, tends to get it a little sluggish, but overall it should arrive halfway decent. So now I have my worms. And I've been checking them out and everything seems alive. And just for the sake of my display here, I'm going to put them back in the bag. Now I really do not know why you've bought these worms. People buy them for all kinds of reasons. A lot of people buy them for composting. A lot of people buy them for their pets, their aquarium fish, fishing. But the majority, it appears in these last few years, have been buying this worm, this particular worm, the red wiggler worm, for composting. Now it's called a composting worm because it tends to live on the top 3 inches of the soil. So if you want to make a little bed, I don't advise a pail, a deep pail. I don't advise a big tub. I advise something that might only have to be about 6 inches to 8 inches deep, since the worm itself enjoys living in the top 3 inches because it is a composting worm. For instance, the European nightcrawler is more of an aerating worm, or the Canadian nightcrawler that tends to go deeper and aerate, while the red wiggler, the red worm, is more of a composting worm, which tends to stay on top, so you do not have to go deep. 6 to 8 inches is fine. So let's say you want to just have fun. Many people just buy the worms because they're fun. They're fun to raise. They make fun science projects. Kids love them. They're fun. Everybody in the world knows about worms. All right? So let's make a little homemade worm bed. How do I do that? Just so I can keep my worms when I receive them. Well, what I have here is some peat moss, dry peat moss that you could purchase at Walmart, Home Depot, certainly any garden store. It's just basically, it's called sphagnum peat moss. Easy. And I'm going to put this in here as is. Nothing hard. This is basically, I'd say this is a 4-gallon bucket. You can see what I put in here. A little bit of peat moss. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some water. I got a 1-gallon jug of water here to make it easy for you. And I'm going to sprinkle this on. Very easy. Then I'm going to mix it in. Now if you're buying worms, I hope you're not afraid of dirt. I hope you're not afraid of getting a little dirty, a little muddy. That's part of the fun package. Let's get it all mixed up. Now as we're mixing, we want to keep in mind, we do not want it wet. We want it moist. Moist meaning at any given time I could grab the peat moss and I could squeeze it and I just have drops coming between my knuckles. I do not want running water coming between my knuckles. Okay, this is, I want to take my time. Remember, I'm enjoying every minute of this because I just received my worms, and I want to give them a nice bed to live in. For whatever reason I want to keep them for. We could go into that in a few minutes. But let's see. Okay, I've got the bedding to the point. Just a couple drops. Just a couple drops of moisture. See that? It's not really just incredibly flowing, but it's nice and moist. And I would probably want to make the bed about 1 inch from the top, but we'll just stop here for now. So basically I have my bed. And this is a good area. In other words, you don't want to make a bed out of a pail, a deep pail, because then all the worms would have, because they're a composting worm, like to stay at the top, is this much square area. For let's say, you could use this for as many as 2,000 worms in an area like this. Again, 18 inches, 2 foot, 6 inches deep. 2,000 would be the max for an area like this. If you received over 2,000, you might want to double the size, but I'm just giving you a little bit of an idea. And you can see how that looks. It's a little darker brown because it's moist. And we're ready. Now what you'd like to do is, if we could bring the camera over here, please. I just want to dump my worms right on top. Right on top. And my worms, as they revive, will basically go where they want to go. And I tell you what we're going to do for right now. We're going to stop the camera for about 3 minutes. Okay, it's been about 3 minutes. We placed the worms in. You can see they're getting happy. They're getting acclimated to their new environment. And we're going to give them a couple more minutes. Now I am out here, it's about 11 o'clock in the morning. There's some direct sunlight. Sunlight will make the worms go down. Or house light. Wherever there is light, it's going to influence the activity of the worm, and it's going to want to go into its culture, and that's what the worms are doing now. So let's give them a couple more minutes, and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, we're back. As we're waiting for the descent of the worms, I thought I'd show you your worm future. That right there is a worm capsule. That's a red worm egg. It's what they lay. They could lay as many as one every other day. That is both worms. Both worms carry the female and the male gene, and they could both lay eggs after they've mated, approximately one every couple days, but that's what it looks like. Now a worm egg at its max, that could actually hold as many as 20 baby redworms. Usually anywhere between 3 to 7, but as many as 20. So just to give you a little information as we're waiting. But that's what you want to see. That's your future. Now getting back to the worms. As you can say, it's been about 5 minutes. All the worms have made their descent. There might be a few stragglers. Every now and then you might even have a few that try to escape. Don't sweat it. You know, out of 500 or 1,000 or 2,000, a couple might, they might be in rebellion and want to run. Don't worry about it. Now here what I have is I have some cornmeal. You could buy this at the store, or you could go to the mill. Very inexpensive. But I believe you should feed the worms a very light feeding of cornmeal. And I'll give them enough food. Now you could cover this. Maybe you could go to Walmart and buy a piece of burlap, or you could cover this with burlap, or your local nursery or Lowe's. You can find burlap there, or you could leave it just like this. Different rules of thought. But for the most part, I just wanted to make sure that the public knows how to get their worms ready to enjoy. Again, we received our worms. We received our worms in the bag. We've gotten our container. We've gotten our peat moss. We've added enough water to just make it moist. We've dumped the worms, let the worms go down, and now we've fed the worms. We are ready now. We are ready to have some fun. And before I close, I just want you to make you aware of the fact you've made a good purchase. Nothing beats a worm as far as doing its job in the soil. In the fall of the year, all the trees, every tree is loaded with leaves. All the leaves fall. And in the springtime, where are all the leaves? They're not on the ground anymore. Why? Because all the worms, all the microbes, all the insects, all the beneficial insects of the ground have taken those minerals and brought them back to the ground. And I know many of you are organic gardeners. You cannot beat worms, particularly this worm, in your compost pile. Throw out all the additives, throw out all the poisonous insecticides, whatever it might be that you might have. Go with the worm as far as being 100% organic. You'll taste the difference, you'll see the difference, and you'll feel the difference in the vegetables you eat. Okay, God bless.